The silence in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. It was past 11 at night, and I was still sitting in the dark living room, lit only by the faint orange glow of a street lamp filtering through the wooden blinds. In my hand, I was turning over my grandfather's old pocket watch, a battered brass Seikosha that my father had given me the day I started my first real construction company 40 years ago. I wasn't checking the time. I already knew it was late. I just needed to hold on to something solid, something real, because what I'd discovered that afternoon had shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. My name is Javier Jimenez. I'm 63 years old, and for the past 38 years, I've been married to a woman named Elena. We met when we were both in our 20s, back when I was just a laborer with a beat up van and a toolbox full of dreams. She was working as a receptionist at a small accounting firm. We built everything together. Our home, a beautiful two-story house in a quiet neighborhood in Seville, I built with my own two hands, brick by brick, beam by beam. Our company, Construcciones Jimenez, which now employs over 50 people and turns over millions every year. And our family, our daughter Lucia, who is now 32 years old, a successful emergency room doctor, and married to a man I thought was a decent, hardworking financial advisor named Pablo Serrano. That was the life I thought I had. That was the world I believed in. But at 9 o'clock that morning, that world had started to crack. Elena had said she was going to visit an old client, a retired gentleman named Don Aguirre, who needed help organizing some tax documents. She'd done bookkeeping for small businesses over the years, just to keep busy, she always said. It seemed harmless. She left around 9:30, kissed me on the cheek, and told me she'd be back by early evening. By 10 o'clock that night, she still wasn't home. I'd called her phone 3 times. No answer. I told myself not to worry. Don Aguirre was elderly, probably hard of hearing. Maybe he talked too much. Maybe she got caught up. There were 1,000 reasonable explanations. But at 10:30, I went upstairs to our bedroom to look for something else entirely. I needed a phone charger, and I thought she might have one in her nightstand drawer. I opened the drawer, and that's when I found it. Tucked underneath a stack of old paperback novels and some costume jewelry, there was a small tube. Lubricant. Intimate lubricant. The kind couples use. We hadn't been intimate in over 2 years. I stared at that tube for what felt like an eternity. It was half empty, half empty. My mind raced through the possibilities. Maybe it was old. Maybe she'd bought it years ago and forgotten about it. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. But then my fingers brushed against something else. A receipt. I pulled it out. It was from the Hotel Alfonso Tres, one of the most elegant and expensive hotels in all of Seville. The date was that very afternoon. The charge was for 320 euros, a double room. The room started to spin. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the receipt crumpling in my fist. 38 years of marriage, 38 years of building a life together. And in one moment, it all felt like a lie. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call her to demand answers. Something inside me went cold and very, very still. I put the receipt back exactly where I'd found it. I closed the drawer, and then I had an idea. A terrible, brilliant, vengeful idea. I went down to my workshop in the garage. On a shelf, I had a bottle of industrial-grade polyurethane adhesive. We used it on construction sites for heavy-duty jobs, bonding floor tiles, sealing cracks. It was incredibly strong. It dried clear, was almost impossible to remove without industrial solvents, and once it bonded, it wasn't letting go. I carried the bottle back upstairs. I emptied the lubricant tube into the sink, washed it out, and carefully refilled it with the adhesive. Then I put it back in her drawer, exactly as I'd found it. I closed the drawer, went downstairs to the living room, turned off all the lights, and waited. At 10 minutes to midnight, I saw headlights sweep across the front window. I heard the car door shut, then the click of heels on the tiled pathway. Heels. Elena never wore heels to visit an 80-year-old client. The front door opened. She stepped inside, silhouetted against the faint light from the street. She was wearing a black dress. Not the casual clothes she'd left in that morning. A sleek, elegant black dress that I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was styled. Her makeup was fresh. And as she walked past me, I caught a whiff of perfume. Not the floral scent I'd bought her last Christmas. Something different. Something expensive. She didn't see me at first. She hummed softly to herself, hung her handbag on the hook by the door, and slipped off her heels. Then she turned toward the living room and froze. Javier! Her hand flew to her chest. My God, you scared me. What are you doing sitting in the dark? I reached over and switched on the lamp next to my chair. The warm light filled the room. "Long meeting with Don Aguirre?" I asked. My voice came out flat, controlled. She laughed, but it was too bright, too quick. "Oh, you know how he is. He just talks and talks. I couldn't get away." Don Aguirre, 82 years old. Bed by 8:30 every night without fail. "Right," I said. I stood up slowly, slipping my grandfather's watch back into my pocket. "I'm heading to bed. Long day tomorrow." She smiled, and I saw the relief flicker across her face. "I'll be up in a minute. Just going to get some water." I nodded and walked past her toward the stairs. But I didn't go up. I stopped in the hallway, just out of sight, and listened. I heard her move through the kitchen. The refrigerator door opened. Ice clinked into a glass. Then I heard something else. The soft rustle of her handbag. I moved silently, my footsteps making no sound on the marble floor I'd laid myself 15 years ago. Her bag was still hanging by the door, unzipped. I reached inside. My fingers found a receipt. A restaurant in Triana, 180 euros, 2 people, 2 meals, 2 glasses of wine. I kept digging. Lipstick, compact mirror, wallet. And then, at the very bottom, tucked inside a small makeup pouch, a scrap of red lace. Lingerie, brand new. Tag still attached. Size small. Elena hadn't worn a size small in 15 years. I felt something crack open in my chest. I shoved everything back into her bag exactly as I'd found it and retreated to the downstairs bathroom, flushing the toilet to cover any sound. A few seconds later, I heard her footsteps on the stairs. "Javier, are you coming up?" I waited 10 seconds. 20. Then I called back, my voice steady. "Yeah, be right there." That night, I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully, her breathing slow and even. She had no idea. No idea that I knew. No idea what was coming. I made a decision in the darkness. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed to know everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every single detail. And then, when I had all of it, I was going to destroy them. The next morning, I made pancakes, just like I'd done thousands of mornings before. She came downstairs at 7:15, dressed in slacks and a blazer, and kissed me on the cheek as she passed. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself coffee. "Couldn't sleep? Thought I'd make breakfast." She smiled. That same smile that had made my heart warm for 38 years. Now, it just made me cold. She left at 7:40. I watched her car disappear down the street. Then I picked up my phone and called my foreman. "I'm not feeling well. Taking the day off." He didn't question it. I never took days off. I went upstairs to our bedroom. The bed was made, corners tucked tight, just like always. I started with her computer. Her password was easy. Our daughter's name and her birth year. Lucia, 1989. I scrolled through her emails, deleted items, sent messages. There were dozens, all to the same address. Pablo.sereno@asesoriafinanciera.es. My son-in-law. The man married to my daughter. My hands were shaking as I read. They weren't just flirtatious. They were explicit, detailed. Plans for hotel rooms, romantic getaways disguised as business trips. And then I found an attachment. A PDF. A legal document transferring 30% ownership of Construcciones Jimenez to a shell company called Inversiones Triana SL. My signature was on it, but I had never signed it. I'd never even heard of Inversiones Triana. I took photos of everything with my phone. Then I called the one person I trusted completely, my business partner of 30 years, Andres. He arrived at my house within half an hour. I showed him everything. The emails, the forged document, the receipts. Andres went pale. He's a tough man, a bulldog, not easily shocked, but this shook him. "We need proof," he said quietly. "Real proof. Photos, video, something they can't deny. I know a guy, private investigator, retired from the National Police. He's discreet. His name is Eduardo Medina." 2 days later, I was sitting in Eduardo Medina's small, tidy office in the center of Seville. He was a solid man in his late 40s with graying hair and calm, assessing eyes. He listened to everything without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I can help you," he said. "Surveillance, documentation, the full package. 2,000 euros up front, plus 150 an hour for active field work. It might take a few weeks." I don't care what it costs, I said. I need to know everything. He nodded. Then we have a deal. I gave him Elena's photo, Pablo's details, their routines, their cars, their usual haunts. He gave me a cheap burner phone and told me to keep it with me at all times. When I have something, I'll contact you on this. Don't use it for anything else, and don't tell anyone you have it. I walked out into the bright Seville sunshine, the burner phone heavy in my pocket, and drove home to wait. A week later, I was on a construction site in Dos Hermanas, watching my crew frame out a new office building when the burner phone buzzed. One new message: Eduardo Medina. I stepped away from the noise of the saws and hammers and opened it. 4 photos loaded slowly. The first showed a parking lot. I recognized it immediately. The Hotel Alfonso XIII. 2 people stood beside a dark sedan. A woman with brown hair wearing a cream blouse. A man, taller, younger. Dark hair slicked back, wearing a gray suit. They were kissing. Not a peck on the cheek, a real kiss. The second photo was worse. Her hand was on the back of his neck. His hand was on her waist. The third photo showed them walking toward the hotel entrance, fingers laced together. Elena was smiling. I couldn't remember the last time she'd smiled at me like that. The fourth photo was a close-up of his face. Pablo Serrano, my son-in-law. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the concrete. I stood there, staring at nothing, trying to breathe. Pablo, the man who sat at my dinner table every Sunday. The man who called me suegro and asked for my advice. The man I trusted with my daughter's happiness. I picked up the phone with shaking hands and scrolled to Medina's message. The words blurred in front of my eyes, but I forced myself to read them again. Subject confirmed. Pablo Serrano, age 36. Relationship with Elena Jimenez observed on 5 separate occasions over the past 2 weeks. Surveillance continuing. 5 times in 2 weeks. 5 times. While I was working, while I was trusting them, while I was sitting at home waiting for a wife who never came. I leaned against the side of my truck, gripping the edge of the bed so hard the metal bit into my palms. I needed something solid to hold on to because my legs felt like they might give out. Around me, the world kept moving. Cars passed on the road. Workers shouted to each other inside the building. The saws screamed through lumber. But I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, staring at those words on the small screen. Lucia. Oh God, Lucia. My little girl. 32 years old now. A doctor, a wife, a woman. But in that moment, all I could see was the baby I'd held in my arms the day she was born. I remember the hospital room, the fluorescent lights, the way she'd curled her tiny fingers around mine, how small she'd been, how fragile. I remembered the promise I made to myself in that moment, the promise every father makes. I would protect her, always, no matter what. I'd walked her down the aisle 3 years ago in the church where Elna and I were married. She looked so beautiful in her white dress, so happy. I'd taken her hand, placed it in Pablo's, and told him to take care of her. I'd trusted him. I'd welcomed him into our family, into our home, into our Sunday dinners. And all that time, he'd been sleeping with my wife. All that time, he'd been planning God knows what. I wanted to kill him. The thought came to me with startling clarity, like a voice speaking inside my head. I wanted to drive to his office, walk in, and put my hands around his throat. I wanted to squeeze until the smug smile disappeared forever. I wanted to watch the life leave his eyes, the way he was trying to take everything from mine. The rage was so hot, so consuming, that for a moment I couldn't see anything else, but I didn't move. I forced myself to breathe. In, out, in, out. I forced myself to think. If I killed him, I'd go to prison. Lucia would lose both her father and her husband in one day. She'd never know the truth. She'd spend the rest of her life wondering why her father snapped, why he murdered the man she loved. They'd win, even in death. I couldn't let that happen. I took another breath, pulled out my regular phone, and called Andres. Pablo, I said, my voice hoarse, barely recognizable. It's Pablo. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, processing. Then, quietly, Jesus. Andres finally whispered, his voice heavy with disbelief. I just got the photos. Medina sent them. It's him. I know. Where are you? The site. But I'm coming to you. I can't be here right now. I can't look at another person. I drove to Andres' house in a daze, the streets of Seville passing by in a blur of colors and shapes I didn't register. I don't remember parking. I don't remember walking to his door. But suddenly, he was there, waiting on the porch, his face etched with concern and grim understanding. He'd known me for 30 years. He'd never seen me like this. I got out of the truck and walked toward him. For the first time since this nightmare began, I said it out loud. The words felt like poison leaving my body. She's been sleeping with my daughter's husband. Andres' face hardened, his jaw tightening. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just put a hand on my shoulder and guided me inside, the way you'd guide a wounded man who couldn't see straight. His grip was firm, steadying. It was the only thing keeping me upright. We sat in his kitchen. It was a room I'd been in 100 times over 30 years of friendship. Sunday barbecues, celebrations after big contracts, late night talks about business and life. I knew the pattern of the tiles, the way the light came through the window in the afternoon. But this time, everything felt foreign, like I was seeing it from far away. He poured us both a generous glass of whiskey, the bottle clinking against the glasses in the quiet room. He slid one toward me. I stared at it, the amber liquid catching the light, the ice cubes slowly melting. But I couldn't bring myself to drink it. My stomach was a knot of rage and disbelief. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly, his voice careful, measured. I shook my head. "I don't know. I really don't know." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his voice low and serious. "You can't confront them yet. I know that's probably the first thing you want to do. Walk in there and blow it all up. Believe me, I understand. If it were me, I'd want to burn the whole world down. But if you go in there now, they'll cover their tracks. They'll deny everything, destroy evidence, and you'll be left with nothing but accusations that make you look like a jealous old man." He paused, letting that sink in, watching my face for any sign of understanding. "And this isn't just about Elena anymore, Javier. This is about Lucia. She's married to him. She loves him. She trusts him with her whole heart. If you go in there without absolute, undeniable proof, without a solid plan, she's the one who's going to get hurt the most. She'll be caught in the middle, forced to choose between believing her father or believing her husband. And without proof that she can't deny, you might lose her forever." He was right. Of course he was right. Lucia didn't know. She had no idea her husband was betraying her, that her mother was betraying all of us. She still laughed at his jokes, still held his hand at dinner, still looked at him with love and trust that made my heart ache. The thought of destroying that, of shattering her world without being absolutely certain, was unbearable. I couldn't risk becoming the villain in her story. He was right. Lucia didn't know. She had no idea her husband was betraying her, that her mother was betraying all of us. She still laughed at his jokes, still held his hand at dinner, still looked at him with love and trust that made my heart ache. The thought of destroying that, of shattering her world without being absolutely certain, was unbearable. I couldn't risk becoming the villain in her story. He was right. Lucia didn't know. She had no idea her husband was betraying her, that her mother was betraying all of us. You need more than photos, Javier. You need to know how deep this goes, how long it's been happening, if there's money involved, if they're planning something. Planning what? I don't know, but people who cheat don't usually stop there. You need to find out. I thought about the forged document, the 30% transfer. Pablo was a financial advisor. He had access to my company records through Elena, who still knew the log-in details. He had access to Lucia's trust fund. He had access to everything. Andres was right. This was bigger than an affair. I needed a plan. I needed to protect Lucia and everything I'd built. The next morning, I went back to Eduardo Medina's office. I showed him the forged document I'd found on Elena's computer. He studied it carefully. "This is sophisticated," he said. "A shell company, offshore accounts, forged signatures. This isn't just a love affair. This is financial crime. I'll dig deeper, but I need access to bank records, company accounts, everything." I gave him what he asked for. Then I went home and pretended everything was normal. For the next 3 weeks, I played the role of the oblivious husband. I went to work. I came home. I kissed Elena on the cheek. I had Sunday dinner with Pablo and Lucia. I smiled. I laughed. I asked about their week. And all the while, Medina was building a case. He found the money trail. Over the past 18 months, Pablo had siphoned nearly 200,000 euros from my company through fake invoices and consulting fees paid to his shell company. He'd opened a joint offshore account with Elena in the Cayman Islands. He'd taken out a life insurance policy on me worth 2 million euros, with Elena named as the beneficiary. And he'd done it all while sleeping in my house, eating my food, and calling me family. The recordings were the worst. Medina had placed a listening device in Elena's car.